for those of you who have not met me before, my name is Victoria Whitehouse, and I'm operations at Hub 4. And we've been working with the DSE regulations for around 30 years now, and we have thousands of assessments across lots of different sectors, different size organisations, and different working arrangements. And one thing that these all have in common is the same issues do come up again and again. We're dealing with humans in a sedentary workplace, so it's not surprising that the same issues do come up, and that's really what we want to share with you today. So we will be looking at some chair related issues that can cause stress and fatigue on the body, and what we can do to resolve those. We're going to also look at DSE accessories, so like your footrests and laptop risers, that sort of thing. And we'll also look at some non-equipment issues to do with strategy and managing DSE as well. So we should encompass quite a lot today, and we're hoping that you'll go away with some actionable insights. So we'd like this to be relatively conversational. As I said, we do have a structure for this, but we would like to hear from you if you do have questions, or if you do have case studies that you would like to bring. It's a really good opportunity to use this time to ask whatever questions that you need. Please make use of the chat box, because we're here and we're ready to answer questions. So what we'd like, the aim really is for you guys to leave with a clear understanding of some of the most common DSE issues that we believe that you will face when you're managing your DSE users. It might be useful to know how many DSE users that you're managing, whether you have a hybrid workforce, whether you have home workers, that sort of thing. So if you could put in the chat like how many DSE users that you manage and where they're based, that can kind of help us tailor this as well to suit the people who are in the room. We want to make sure that you've got confidence to know what's going to make a difference, and an insight into where risk and discomfort can hide, and also see if we can get you confident that you have got visibility of your DSE processes. Are you in line with the DSE regulations, that sort of thing. So right, we'll go right into our chat with Andrew, who is our chair expert for today. So thank you so much for being here with us, Andrew.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I was hoping that you'd be able to just briefly introduce yourself and kind of start off with the first point, looking at the chairs that don't support movement or posture variation.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Andrew Shepherd, and I'm the ergonomic and 24/7 seating specialist at Flock. So they're a Scandinavian manufacturer of office seating and office furniture in general. But I look after the ergonomic sector and the 24/7 sector within that. So my day-to-day duties will be looking after questions from clients about operational values of chairs, or maybe compliance in certain situations of movement, or maybe just looking into training people about what options there are with chairs and how they move and how they can fit, not necessarily the person individually, because that's an important factor, but equally fits the work style, actually the task they're going to perform as well. So we know and understand that a chair should be adjustable, and the level of adjustment is going to be down to the individual, but also we also like to look at how that person moves and what they physically do to make sure that we've got a good mechanism that supports that movement when they need to move. I think we all understand that sitting gets bad press for extended periods of time, but we're always on the case of encouraging people to move. And in whatever that may be, maybe it's having a smaller cup on your desk, so you have to go to the water machine more often rather than having a big cup on your desk. It could be basic things like that, or getting up to go and have a chat with a catalogue or with a colleague. But I'd always advocate, if you're going to sit well.
Yeah.
And that would go down into what your chair is capable of doing.
Yeah.
And that, to me, personally, is very important. There's lots of levers on chairs, and they all have a function. They're there for a reason, and they're all to help you to get as supportive as possible within the task that you're performing. And I think generally we look at desk-based work around a computer screen or a laptop or some external screen. There's me sitting on an iPad today, but on a small pedestal that gets it to the correct height. So I feel comfortable where I'm sitting at the moment. But it's playing with those levers and understanding what they do. So a good chair should have enough adjustment, i.e., seat slide, seat height, perhaps an independent back angle, an adjustable lumbar support, maybe a good pair of adjustable armrests, and a neck rest if needed. And I know some of those things are subjective in terms of armrests or neck rests, and that's why we have DSE assessments. But within that, there are further classifications of task chairs. So
Yeah.
if you look into the classifications like EN 1335 or BS 5459, and sitting within that but slightly on the outside is NPR 1813. These are all standards that office chairs comply to and denote their level of adjustment.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
We do have, like, for example, when a company rolls out their DSE assessments from home, they'll sometimes get feedback saying, like, I'm working from a gaming chair. It doesn't have XYZ, this, that, the other. And people think because like it maybe like looks impressive that it's going to be like, supportive for them. But they take a DSE assessment, they realize actually it hasn't got a level of adjustability that's like required by the questions that are being answered. Why do in your own words, why is it important to have a chair that is like has got sufficient adjustability compared to just having a gaming chair or people working from their dining room chairs at home, for
yeah,
example?
I suppose to me it's comfort in yourself, but equally being supported. And I think the best measure is to listen to your body. If it's aching somewhere, it's aching for a reason, and you need to listen to that and actually try and find out how you can, adopt a different position or change or move. That's where a good adjustable chair will be able to come in to be able to support you throughout the task that you're performing. So I suppose the best analogy is a bit like walking down the road, in a pair of shoes that aren't yours. If they're too big, you find that within a few hundred yards, your toes will be gripping on the inside of the shoes because they don't fit properly. So you're trying to fit into the shoe that's not designed for you to do a job. So your legs start to ache after a very, very short period of time. In the same principle, it's with a chair. So you want to try and get the chair to fit you. And something like a dining chair has no adjustments. You could put a cushion down the back to improve the quality of that, but actually, I think in some respects we're beyond that because there's always something better. And I suppose the next level is having something better than you've already got is a step in the right direction. You don't need to jump to some of the high-end chairs that I would work with on a day-to-day basis because as good as they are, it's not necessarily what you need for you as an individual because we're all different. We have different needs.
Yeah.
But going back to that, a seat slide would fit taller or shorter people, so that's a great option to have. Something with an adjustable lumbar, maybe with an adjustable backrest to it as well, so you can adjust the lumbar independently of the backrest itself.
Yeah.
Adjustable arms, to me, arms are a must. I'm a big advocate of arm rests. But again, it's having the right type of armrest for you. And a lot of standard chairs, I think, are maybe poorly designed from an armrest perspective. Because a common flaw we get a lot of the time is that, I can't sit close enough to my desk because the arms hit the desk.
Yeah.
So most people would either drop the arms down or raise them up so you can get closer. Now, to me, sadly, that's maybe a poorly designed armrest. It's a somewhat of a quick response, not seeing the individual's workplace and how they work. But in generally, a pair of armrests should sort of provide enough support to the meat of your arm, so somewhere between your elbow and forearm, avoiding the bony parts, so to
Yeah.
speak. So it's on the comfortable part of your arm, but then set far enough back so it brings your shoulders in line with your ears as a rough guide. So that creates a nice neutral upright posture. So your spine is in a nice neutral alignment. So less pressure going down and less forces applied. The minute that goes out of alignment, more forces are applied to the body and your body will start to ache a little bit quicker. So the more adjustment, the better, in my opinion, but it's not necessary in all cases.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Andrew, I'm looking at the comments today and just wanted to share one with you. You might want to go into this a bit more, but Chris Barlow, who we both know, has come on and said the Axia armrests are fantastic. So just whilst Chris has raised that point, what is it about them that is so fantastic? Does he think, and why do you think it as well?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I mean, the Axia in itself is, in my opinion, one of the best chairs in the market. I'm slightly biased because I do work for the company that makes it, but having been and working with and around chairs for 30 years, I've seen a lot of poor chairs and a lot of good chairs. And it is a fantastic chair. But for the armrest in isolation, that one, they're deliberately set back so you get nice and close to your desk. You can really tuck yourself in, but also support your arms on the armrest, as well as using the desk as a natural extension to that. And then your arms can fall naturally onto the keyboard. So you into that zone one, if you like, of not overreaching for the keyboard. And I think therein lies the problem, where people then with a pair of arms that don't allow you to get too close to this, the first thing to do is start leaning forwards away from the backrest of the chair and start moving towards the keyboard. Whereas I would always recommend actually bring the keyboard to you. Don't disengage with the back of the chair, drag the keyboard and pull it towards you, because that's much easier to move and you can maintain your back in association with the backrest and get better use out of the back support.
Yeah.
But equally, when you unlock a chair and get it moving, where the Axia works really well is the armrests are not connected to the movement mechanism. So the arms stay horizontal with the work surface at all times. So your arms are not pitching when you are moving. And that's a common issue with a lot of standard chairs where the armrests are connected to the mechanism. When you recline back or start movement, which is great when you're sitting, to activate and, increase blood flow and oxygen, your arms are then pitching away from the keyboard.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I know obviously by putting your armrests up to get over the desk, you're going to be causing yourself issues with your shoulders. What do you think, when you don't have adjustable armrest, would you, and let's say the rest of the chair is fit for purpose, would you ever recommend removing the armrests, for example, or would you say that would be enough to warrant a new chair?
I mean, for myself, when I'm using my chairs, I think in a very high percentage of cases, we wouldn't need to remove the armrests because they are set back for that reason. And they provide that nice support in collaboration with the work surface. So it's very rare for myself, in my experience, that we need to remove armrests.
Yeah.
And I think also in a bigger picture to add, that if you can get good armrest support, it actually helps, to your point, relax across the shoulders and neck. You can naturally support your arms and therefore naturally support your upper body. And that's where maybe 15 to 20% of your body weight comes from. If that's not supported, then aches and pains will come in.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier about how everyone is kind of like different size and shapes. Like sometimes it can be the same height, but like completely like different size torso and legs and things like that. For like ease and just conformity, a lot of organizations will like purchase a chair, especially if it's like a hot desking environment. It just keeps it a lot easier. What do you think the pros and the cons of kind of having a uniform approach to chairs in an office is?
Well, obviously, I suppose the benefits from a corporate identity perspective means across the floor plate, the office looks uniform. It looks smart. There's not a lot of odd chairs all over the place. But you only really see that when the office is empty. Yeah. But I understand from a corporate perspective also, equally from a purchasing point of view, These larger corporates get better deals for quantity purchases, and it's always easier for them to buy 30, 50, 100 shares or whatever it is, rather than do 100 different individual DSE assessments, which of course we know is a legal requirement and should be done anyway. But when these larger corporates are looking at a financial package, DSE doesn't go out of the window because questions are asked on, we want a chair to be adjustable, we want lumbar support, we want armrests. But there's never that much detail involved. So we always try and encourage that wider conversation and add and make sure things have at least got a seat slide, a lumbar support. They might be slightly better than standard, but at least they may fit a budget. And I think they're the complications, that when you're looking at a landscape, they're bought for the masses, but obviously a DSE is much more personal and individual and is somewhat equally reactive. People are calling upon that when there's an issue.
Yeah.
It's arguably already too late. And that's always a challenge. But we do try and encourage people to have as much adjustment as possible and equally look at what they've had previously. So we'd always try to not necessarily upsell, but maybe make sure what they're buying is better than what they've had before. So it's got a better chance of fitting more people.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. I suppose my last point comes to actually setting up the chair. As you say, you can have a chair with so many different functions and features, but if someone hasn't learned how to adjust it for themselves, it could just be as damaging as like not having an ergonomic chair with all the features if they haven't actually set it up to themselves.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And that's why, as I said earlier, I think it's very important to play with those levers and understand what they do. But what one would hope within your corporate setup, you've got somebody internally and either in facilities or health and safety, or if you've got an occupational health department, you've got somebody on site that would assist. But then I suppose there is a general set of rules that in terms of overall height, for me, it's sort of hips above the knees, but whilst maintaining, a good firm footing on the ground, or if you need a footrest, use a footrest to create that false floor. Seat depth, approximately 3 to 4 fingers behind the knee when your knee is at right angles is a rough guide to seat depth. Lumbar support is very much individual. For myself, I always tell people, for me, it's just above my belt where my natural hollow is. But it's not something you can generally tell people. They have to feel that for themselves, because when they're against the backrest, you can't necessarily tell where that lumbar support is.
Yeah.
So it is very much a process, trial and error for that in some respects. But inflate that lumbar support, but stop as soon as you can feel it. Don't overinflate.
Yeah.
And the armrest, I think for me, it's have your arms nicely relaxed by your side. Bend your elbows to 90 degrees, and that's where the armrest height should be. So you're not hunching, to your earlier point, or equally, if they're too low, reaching to one side or the other.
Yeah.
And that's a somewhat broad brush statement, but within a few minutes, it should be quite easy to understand what your chair does, and try and make yourself comfortable. And within a relatively short period of time, if your body's not supported in the correct way, it will tell you. Aches and pains will come in. Listen,
exactly.
and then change accordingly.
Yeah, and it's cumulative as well, which is why it's so important to get this right in the first instance, isn't it?
Absolutely.
A couple of days here and there not working in perfect posture with the correct equipment, it's okay, but not when you're spending 8 hours a day for days, weeks, months. You're going to end up with significant.
Yeah. I think that's the bigger picture, isn't it? Absolutely. We all sit perhaps longer than we should do.
Yeah.
And I'm very much guilty of that. I'd like to think I'm conscious of what my body is telling me and shift and move accordingly. But we all get sidetracked by the tasks we're doing. And before you know it, it's lunchtime. It's so easily done. But let's say the key thing for me is, just listen to your body. If it's aching, move. It's honestly, it's the best thing. Movement is the best thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone have any questions specifically for Andrew relating to chairs, relating to like choices for chairs, features, anything like that? We can come back to it at the end. There is like an open Q&A opportunity. But if there is anything specifically that you'd like to know, anything about supplying equipment for home workers, anything like that, we can
just monitoring the chat, Victoria, and they've got a couple of questions, but they're not quite chair related. Although one would be an interesting one for Andrew to give his thoughts on, if I can just read it out. So that's from Kirsten, who said, when a colleague has a knee replacement and requires a leg support, does this fall under DSE or as medical equipment? So we're slightly going into the DSE world there, but I wonder, Andrew, in terms of what questions you get asked around leg support in terms of chairs, is that something that sort of comes into your sphere, and how would you address someone who's had a knee replacement or something like that from a seating perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I it's not something I come across regularly, but I have come across it before. You're testing my memory. It was a while ago. And maybe standards have changed since then, because it was a while ago. But I would suspect, because it's an individual need, it would come under the DSE for that individual. And there are companies out there that provide leg rests that are suitable. So absolutely, if it's an individual need, then it would come under. It's no different from another desktop accessory that individual requires, like a document holder or speech to text software. If that's required, then that's down to individual needs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it probably falls under both categories. Yes, it's medical equipment, but it's also required for her to do her job safely at
absolutely.
Yeah. So she needs that piece of equipment to do her role, which is sat at her desk. Then it's something that, I mean, you can ask to provide a doctor's note, have this implemented. Some equipment might be provided, some you might have to get, but it does come under your duty of care, even if it's not specified by the DSE regulations. We should be making workstations comfortable and accessible for everyone that needs to do their job from a computer. So yeah, I would say that's something that I would get implemented as soon as, because I know that knee replacement surgery, there's a lot of things that you need to do to ensure that it heals well and that it's rehabilitated. So yeah, I would look at getting something set up for this person as soon as you can.
Yeah, I think with medical situations like this, each one is different and individual to that person. But you could bring in a lot of cases, that the knee replacement, you would like to think that person's the condition will improve.
Yeah.
So after a period of time, that equipment may no longer be necessary, but it's needed and required there and then. I think a common one I come across, which I giggle at, rightly or wrongly, but I keep being asked for a pregnancy chair. Arguably there is no such thing, and a pregnancy is an ever evolving situation. The body's going through a lot of changes.
Yeah.
So in that respect, it's what feels right now will not feel right next week or next month.
Yeah.
So there are challenges out there, and I think you just have to listen to the person that's asking the questions and help as best as possible. But in some cases, there isn't an easy solution. It's talking, listening, and doing what you can to appease.
Absolutely, especially like with pregnancy, with the clients that we manage, we make sure that we do an assessment like at some point in each trimester, and then if they're uncomfortable, they need extra support. There's a couple of like different things that you can advise to keep people comfortable, and the expansion of the abdomen does just, it changes
Absolutely.
how you're working. But again, it's not a long-term condition. It is temporary.
No, correct. Yeah.
So with anything like that, with pregnancy or medical issues, it's better to support and not be reactive to a problem emerging, but just be sensitive and react accordingly.
No, absolutely. I think in respects of a chair, that's where a chair with lots of adjustments can actually be better, maybe slightly overwhelming or overcomplicated, but actually the more adjustments just means it's more adaptable as situations change.
Yes. Oh, Kirsten's also asked why a
Yes,
backrest
there's
is
another
always
question. Yeah.
narrow at the top. I found how to get them both on the screen simultaneously,
Okay.
which is great. Can I ask why backrests always narrow at the top and not support the shoulder area enough?
It's generally down to enable shoulder rotation and shoulder movement. There are chairs that are much fuller in the back, like we mentioned, with gaming chairs that will actually just restrict the upper back and the shoulder for movement. So generally, a slimmer backrest just allows that extra movement of the upper torso.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Was there anything else that came through, Stephen, that you saw well?
There was a couple of other questions, but I think they might be good for the Q&A at the end that we're touching on slightly other topics. So I've sort of made a note of them, and when we get into that, Victoria, I'll sort of remind you of those questions and throw them out there.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so there's still opportunity to ask Andrew questions if anything pops into your mind in the next half hour. Then you still have us for the next 30 minutes. So Stephen, thank you very much for coming on. Stephen was with us a few months ago. We did an event on what DSE accessories are useful, and that went down really, really well. So thank you for being here again.
No problem.
So we want to cover some of the common issues that you see with the use of like DSE accessories. And most of these will be like the issues that people have without them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think, and thank you for asking me back on, Victoria. But yeah, just for those who don't know me, my name's Stephen Howe, and it's back at Elkhausen. So we're a Dutch company, and really we specialise in those accessories that are going to sort of work with your laptop or your PC. Ultimately, they're not necessarily. You look at a laptop, for example, it's not designed as a workstation. It's designed as a way to carry a keyboard and a screen. So once Andrew's got you sitting comfortably, how can we get you interacting more comfortably in the correct manner with your screen, with your laptop, whatever it would be? And I think it's just understanding what's out there, what do you need, what are some of the basics we can offer you? Because a lot of the times, Victoria, it is just very, very small adjustments that can make a very big difference. Like Andrew was saying with the chairs, it can be a small adjustment to the lumbar support that can make a difference. We talked about screen height. Before we did this call, we were talking about it, and screen height is so important. Getting it right, whether you're using a laptop, using a tablet, or using a monitor. One thing I think I may have even said this last time, Victoria, and it's a great little stat, is your head weighs about 5 kilos, which is about the same weight as a 10-pin bowling ball. And if you sort of imagine working with a laptop flat on a table at that sort of 30, 40 degree angle, your neck and shoulders then supporting 27 kilos. So just by having that wrong angle with the screen that you're working with, it's a 5-fold increase in what you're asking your neck and your shoulders to do. Yeah. And how often do you see people, whether you go in, you see someone maybe sitting in a coffee shop or a hot desking area, and they're beavering away for hours with a laptop flat on the table, and that's the same individual who'll probably be stretching back, arm behind their neck, shoulders, sort of, trying to relax those sort of points that are hurting. And that's just simply because they've not got their screen at the right height, and it's creating those problems, and they're doing it day in, day out, week in, week out, without a simple adjustment of getting the screen at the height, which could be something as simple as a laptop stand, a riser. I mean, to be quite honest, for a temporary fix, whilst, we specialize in making accessories, some books, get the screen up. If you don't have a laptop riser to hand, get 3 or 4 books and get the screen up. It doesn't have to be a nice bit of fancy kit that that's well engineered with lots of adjustments. It can be quite a basic adjustment just to give you those additional benefits.
Yeah, exactly, to support that neutral posture. Because again, it's one of those things where it's like if you need to do 15 minutes work, answer a couple of emails from a cafe, again, it's not going to impact your whole life. But if that is literally how you work, you're going to end up actually altering your posture, maybe even permanently, if you don't end up rectifying it. So important. And you're right, like you can you can kind of hijack your environment a little bit to utilize the things around you to make do. Like clearly it's like it's not ideal, but the most important thing is to ensure that like the correct working posture is used. And the education as well, if people don't know that that is bad for them and they might spend a long time in physio down the line, they're not really brought into making those adjustments.
Absolutely. And I think again, it doesn't just have to be a laptop. It can be the screen. It could be the monitor that you're working at. You know, we're big advocates of using monitor arms because they're adjustable. Again, there's a lot of common themes between what Andrew spoke about and what I will talk about. But if you imagine a hot desking area, you could have someone who's 5'2" one day sitting at that desk, and the next day it's someone who's 6'6".
Yeah.
How can they use the screen at the same height? They can't. There's massive problems because either someone's looking up and creating problems with their neck, someone's looking down, creating problems with their neck and shoulders. So it's really, really important when companies think about what equipment are they installing. I think hot desking areas in particular, you know, we talk about the post-COVID era, you know, hot desking, people aren't in every day, they're in 2 or 3 days a week. You've got to have adjustable accessories, an adjustable chair, Andrew touched on, an adjustable height, whether it's a screen, whether it's a laptop stand that's got adjustments. You've got to have that adjustment so we can fit different people, but also the same person moving and changing position throughout the day is really, really important, that we're not just staying in that set position for those 6, 7, 8 hours that we're sort of sat at the desk and working with a laptop or a PC.
Yeah.
There was I don't know if you're aware, Stephen, but there was a study in Canada done on people's height variations between their own workstation, between sitting and standing. And they actually found that when people stood up, they were effectively 3 inches taller, i.e. in relation to the screen, from when they were sat down. So to your point, having an adjustable monitor, when you if you have lucky enough to have a sit-stand desk, you still need to adjust the height of the monitor when you switch between sitting and standing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, that's just that education piece. I've got a sit-stand desk. Great, I'm standing. Excuse me. But it's still got to be at the right height. Just because the desk's changing, you're still at the same, the same proportion to the screen has got to be correct. And when we say this, what we're talking about is just below eye line.
Yeah.
Just below eye line with a laptop stand, with a monitor, just getting the screen just below your eye line is that sweet spot of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. So what would you like recommend, Stephen? Because obviously for people to make adjustments and like build habits, like moving into a hot desk environment, it has to be easy. Otherwise people are less likely to do it. Do you have anything in mind that would be like a good suggestion, something that is just like easy to use, and offers just like that level of variability that's needed?
I mean, I think one of the things, again, we spoke about, Victoria, about what, some of the topics we wanted to cover. And I think one of the things I see quite a lot, certainly from the accessory side, is that it's not just giving out those accessories, but it's getting people to use them and take them with them. So, we could give someone a nice laptop stand, a nice keyboard, a nice mouse, whatever it would be.
Yeah.
And they use it in the office. But what if they spend half their week out and they go into a coffee shop or a satellite office or a railway station or whatever it would be? So for me, the key to whatever you're giving someone from an accessory perspective, and this covers all of the different accessories, it's got to be something that's light, portable, something that's easily adjustable. That's really, really important, because how often I've been in and gone to customers and we've issued all of this kit out, but they're not using it. And that's probably because what you've probably not thought about is, and again, touches on what Andrew said, is what is that person doing? If they're permanently sitting at a certain desk, then you need a certain type of equipment. So you've got to understand the user. If they're going to be moving around and potentially working in 3 or 4 different locations throughout the day, you've got to make it something that's light, compact, something they'll take with them so they can repeat that setup, as I say, whether it's a coffee shop, a satellite office, a train station, whatever. Get them to repeat it, get them used to using that equipment, getting them taking it with them and using it. So it's really important that the accessories that they got matches their sort of working styles and working patterns and the locations that they work in. But as I say, lots of different products out there. We make some, there's lots of ones that our competitors make that are very good. But I think, light, compact, adjustable is really, really important when we're talking about accessories, certainly about getting the screens at the right height.
Yeah, I think you've touched on a wider gamut there of when you talk about people and, the type of jobs that they do. I touched on it earlier, but with seating, it could be as varied as somebody who's monitoring CCTV who would adopt a much more reclined position, and therefore their angle of view, i.e. their eye line, is much further upwards. And you have the complete opposite where people are looking at down microscopes all day who sit, and there are specifically chairs designed to support those people depending upon your angle of view, i.e. where your sight line is. So it's not just your workplace, your workstation could be a microscope, it could be a CCTV, it could be the monitor in front of you, but your workstation is relevant to you. But having the right equipment to support you whilst the work that you're doing, it's all there. I suppose it's just finding the right people to assist you that can, support you with what you're doing.
Absolutely. And I think Victoria's sort of taking it on to the next stage. I think, talking around things around working in line and general setups of peripherals. I think it's just getting people to understand some of the basics. I mean, from our perspective, when we're making accessories and peripherals, what we're looking to try and do is get people working between the width of their shoulders. What we want to try and do is stop a lot of that movement, the twisting and turning, the sort of the raising and falling. So we're trying to get everything, if we can, in a nice straight line in between the width of our shoulders. So, you hear a lot talked about things like compact keyboards. We do compact keyboards. Other people do them. What's the purpose of a compact keyboard? It's got two purposes. The first one is if you've got a compact keyboard that's a lot smaller, you can then bring your mouse inside the width of your shoulders. You think if you go back to offices, we've all probably worked in large standard keyboards, very big, where your arm is reaching out to the right or to the left. What we're trying to do with a compact keyboard, for example, is bringing it within the width of your shoulders. So you're putting less strain on your sort of shoulder and your elbow and your wrist. Yeah. And that straight line that we're also talking about is it applies to things like documents. How often have we seen someone with a desk with paper here, paper there? It's a mess. They're twisting and turning, all that pressure on the spine and shoulders. What we're then thinking about is things like document holders. Now, are document holders as popular as they have been in the past? Probably not. People are, to a degree, using less paper. However, there are still lots of occupations where paper is very, very important. I was this week with an NHS trust in the West Midlands, and it was their physio department who were doing lots with paper. And it's then a case of how do I translate what I've noted on paper onto the screen? Yeah. So therefore, they're still using it. So you're trying to get that paper in front of you. So a document holder is a great bit of equipment just to sort of sit. It sits between the keyboard and the screen. It's got the paper. You're working in a nice straight line and you're going up and down. So it's trying to stop those deviations away from the width of your shoulder and trying to stop the twisting and turning that can come in if you've got that poor setup or you haven't got that one or two little bits of equipment that can make a big difference for you.
Yeah, absolutely, especially with something as repetitive as referring to paperwork or like manually typing things from paperwork onto a computer. Like that is like potentially thousands of like repetitive movements that don't need to be made if it is like in line. You could save someone a lot of strain by that really, really simple adjustment.
I noticed a question, sorry, I know you're looking at them, but I just picked up a question as well, or a comment that Kirsten had said around how compact keyboards, she was a big fan of them and giving that to people with neck and shoulder issues. Yeah, absolutely. I think ultimately, if you think about it, I mean, we generally use the sort of the 90-10 rule in the things that we make around keyboards. 10% of people are using the number pad on a regular basis. If you're not doing a data entry job, you're probably not. Removing that and going compact just allows, as I said before, the mouse to come closer to the center. And I think as Kirsten quite referenced, shoulder and neck issues can be created just because the equipment is wrong. There might not be anything wrong with the equipment per se for the function, but if that isn't sort of mirroring what that individual is doing, it's creating problems. So the compactness for 90% of us is absolutely perfect. Get the mouse closer to the center, and as Kirsten referenced, trying to address those shoulder and neck issues that people can often experience by having the wrong type of equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Kirsten also mentioned about like the weight of equipment, specifically heavy laptop, and needing to carry it around on the go. It's something that like shouldn't really be overlooked, because carrying a laptop, again, especially if you've got like a one shoulder laptop
Mm.
bag. I know that like a lot of people will prefer to have the two, yeah, the like the backpack versions rather
Yeah,
than
like a
like one.
rucksack sort of
Yeah,
type. They're brilliant. I mean, I have one. I know a lot of people who do have them because, as you say, the traditional bag is putting a lot of strain on one shoulder and nothing on the other. So the beauty of it is you sort of spread the weight across by going with that sort of laptop, so that ruck style type laptop bag.
yeah. So that I mean, it's not ideal having a heavy a laptop at all.
No.
No. But yeah, that's something that could alleviate the stress a little bit, is to have it
Mm.
distributed evenly. Yeah, even if it's not ideal. I feel like, organizations don't necessarily always understand that it is a real investment, because just that resistance and the discomfort all detracts from like optimum productivity. And it's a number, I think, that people will be really, really shocked to see. If someone loses like 20 minutes over their entire day, doesn't seem like much, but cumulatively 20 minutes every day due to discomfort over months, years, is huge on the bottom line. But it's almost like it's actually so big, it's just looked over completely. Right, so
Oh, that's it. And Victoria, just sorry, one last thing. I know we're probably moving on to the Q&A because we've touched on that a bit there, but I think people talked about sort of setup and reach zones. One thing that sprung to mind is how far you should be from the screen.
yeah,
Roughly, we say if you put your hand out in front of you, your fingertips should just be touching the screen. So that, I think, again, is something else to sort of think about. It's a very, very simple adjustment. Someone could be having an issue, and it's because the screen is either too near or too far. So as a sort of a checking point, get yourself in your nice position. You're in Andrew's chair. He's got you set up nicely. Hand out in front of you, and the screen should just be brushing against your fingertips. So again, just something that people might be interested to know. Very, very small adjustment, but it could make quite a big difference.
yeah, a lot of things can be fixed in the first instance by making adjustment to equipment, and then it's choosing the right equipment if whatever is in place isn't sufficient. So yeah, no, that's great. Are there any questions on anything to do with like the peripherals or DSE accessories that would be useful to know?
I saw a question came in a little bit earlier on, Victoria. I just sort of hung it back, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this one as well. I think it was Kirsten who asked. This was about wrist rests.
We don't recommend them.
I have to say it's not something we do. What we're trying to do with a fairly flat sort of keyboard is try and get the sort of the wrists fairly flat by introducing a wrist support. From my perspective, Victoria, is you're putting an angle in there. I don't know what you think, but you're almost it's going against what you're trying to achieve. You're putting an angle in. So if you've got a nice wrist rest, but if the keyboard is lower or higher, you're putting an angle in the wrist, and that's what's causing a lot of the strain. So the idea is it's got the word support in its name,
Yeah.
but it's actually counterproductive because it could potentially put an angle in the wrist that is negating any benefit it's meant to be doing. But what would you think along the same sort of lines from an assessment perspective?
Yeah, and like the soft like underside of your wrist, there's like tendons and blood vessels. I wouldn't advise to have anything like pressing on the underside of your wrists or causing any resistance there when you're typing. Those tendons are moving, and you need the blood flow to your hands. And yeah, I would just say like no pressure on the undersides of your wrist when you're using your keyboard. So we don't recommend them. We say if the angle, basically you want your hands just below the height of where your elbows are, so you've got like a slight slant, and then that leaves the underside of your wrist like exposed, so that there's you're not meant to be leaning on the desk, and then you put the wrist rest there and you're just adding extra pressure to part of your body that's quite delicate anyway. So that's our standpoint on the wrist rests.
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah, we have got about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to cover some bits that are kind of relevant to managing DSE, because these are also points of resistance within organizations. One of those is to do with kind of visibility and actually understanding what is needed to be compliant with regulations. So I'll just give like a really, really brief rundown so that you can kind of like check off in your head. If you feel like you're doing these things. Firstly, it's providing training. People need the education on how to set up their equipment. As we were saying earlier, a lot of these things are just like small adjustments, and training is exactly where you are going to fix those. The assessment is where you notice if there's any like shortfalls, any risks, your visual risks, mental risks, and physical risks. So this is really important. If people are missing pieces of equipment, this is where you'll be able to identify any issues. And it's really, really important that following that test as well, that you gain proof of understanding. So make sure that people know make sure that people have understood the training, and that's from like a legally defensible point of view as well. You need to make sure that people have actually understood what they've been taught. And resolving the risks is really important. That should be done as soon as possible. That also kind of builds confidence, so that year on year people know and what to expect with the DSE. They know that they're going to receive feedback, or they're going to have a swift response. It's really, really important just for trust building with this as well. And eye tests too. You should be providing eye tests. A big risk that comes up is dry sore eyes. So any advice on how to take frequent breaks with eyes is really useful within the training as well. That's actually something that is coming up more and more and more. We have a lot of artificial light, there's a lot of eye strain, and it's something that seems to be much more prevalent now. And considering the wider working environment as well, so lighting, temperature and noise as well. So that's something that needs to be looked at too. Providing the equipment, essential as well. So they are kind of like the 8 core points of the regulations. Does anyone have any questions on like the points of the regulations, or would anyone benefit from having like a quick point PDF of those points? Sorry, because my daughter's calling me. I didn't tell her that I was in a meeting. Okay, we don't probably need the presentation anyway. That's whipped away. Another thing that organizations really struggle with as well is uptake after implementation. So actually getting people to take the training. And we always really, really encourage organizations to get their senior team on board with this. Every organization will have a different culture. Some people will be really, really receptive to receiving training. Others will disregard it as pointless. And that's why communication is so important. You want to kind of like take a little bit of a health check of where your organization is with DSE, and kind of adjust accordingly. How much communication do you feel like you need? Do you need more buy-in? Is it worth having incentives? We have quite a few clients that get 100% in their uptake rate, and some of the ones who are really wanting to take it from 80% to 100. We've had some people say that they'll get like IT to put a lock on the computer, for example. I'm not necessarily advocating for that, but they want 100% visibility. They want to see exactly what everyone's doing so that they can manage their team. They keep themselves protected from any legal issues. And the DSE regulations are a legal requirement, just like taxing and insuring your car. So have there been questions coming through on the chat?
And just having a quick look now, there's a few sort of some really interesting comments that the people's experience, I guess, really about. I mean, I think Kirsten referenced about. I think you're referring to sort of DSE. Will there be any revisions? I think Kirsten was saying in terms of the DSE regulations, if I'm reading the question right. So I don't know, Victoria, if you know anything that's happening around DSE regulations, any updates taking place, or anything you've heard?
Yeah, I would be happy to send you some information after the call. I think that, there have been a lot of advancements since the DSE regulations were published. I believe Gerald, who's on the call, was involved in reviewing those, like way back. It was 1992. So yeah, things have moved on, and we're working in like a slightly different landscape now. So it will be really, really interesting to see exactly what's going to be in there. So yeah, I'm happy to send you something over after the call. I'll send the recording and everything like that as well, anything that we've mentioned. So okay. I think my last point was really ownership. DSE kind of tends to straddle different departments, and usually when there's no clear place of responsibility, it gets really lost. And if assessments aren't done, there's no visibility of what's happening in the organisation, where people slip through the cracks, they develop, they can develop MSDs and other issues. It's really, really important we can actually see what's going on, so we can put those pieces of equipment or those implement the adjustments. So I think a lot of departments actually underestimate how much work goes into an annual launch and the assessments, and it ends up being dispersed. And it's really, really important that if you are doing your annual assessments, that you really do carve out that time to make sure that everyone's answered, so that people have got trust in the process year on year. And it just means that you can be really, really confident and assured that, number one, you're in line with regs, and also, and more importantly, kind of supporting everyone who is working at a computer. They wouldn't be able to do their jobs unless they were at the computer. So we really don't want them like suffering any detriment to their health on the back of that. So that's kind of my points around managing DSE. I've really tried to like get through that as quick as possible, because I know that we are only a couple of hours to the end. Have we got more? Yeah, okay, so how are people managing DSE software or manual? Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, ease is one of the biggest things. If someone knows they have to go through a spreadsheet or fill out a paper form, it's much harder to get people to take their assessments, and also managing them afterwards as well. It becomes quite a laborious process. But we ask staff to write DSE self-assessment and managers to review. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Kirsten. Right.
Yeah, that sounds a bit more of a consultative approach. If it's a bit of a conversation between staff and management, that's maybe a good approach. It encourages a bit more conversation rather than. It's interesting. I was encouraging my children, who listened to me, which was a bit of a shock. That they both work in an office, and my eldest had gone through. He was complaining of a bad back, so I gave him a few tips, and he went back to work, and from what he said to me, sat properly. And all of his colleagues were almost pointing the finger at him to say, "Oh, you sit really, really upright," and everybody else was slouching. It's a really interesting, observation from him at such an early age of how to sit properly in a chair. And his observation of others in the workplace of how, you sit really tall, you sit really high. Why are you doing that?
Yeah, it's funny because people, especially when they're young, do tend to just go along with whatever everyone else is doing. I think this came up in our maybe in our last chat, Stephen, where someone said, you know, people don't want to get their DSE accessories out because no one else is, and they don't want to be the odd one out. Like, there's a real herd mentality, and I suppose it's just like re-educating the herd and make sure the herd are all doing the right thing and not the wrong thing. So, you know, there's really so much around just like communication and education that makes this whole thing so much easier to manage. And yeah, having that like open dialogue, being able to say if you've got aches and pains, that sort of thing, like making it like not a taboo subject. People don't like to be seen as complaining, but it's really not if your long-term health is jeopardized.
Yeah. I think that's the bigger issue, isn't it? A lot of corporates have sort of a tick box exercise once a year. You know, do you have a separate team, or do you know how to adjust your chair? You know, it's good to have interaction and a bit more depth behind that conversation.
Yeah.
You know, I suspect it could be difficult if the more employees you've got to manage that process, but I think you'll end up getting better results and staff that are, you know, healthier. You know, more productive, and not a word or phrase I particularly like, but you know, you're more comfortable in what you're doing, so you do actually get more done.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of evidence. Now, that's something I can send through as well, is just some stats on how discomfort affects productivity. It is shocking. And the number is almost so high, it looks barely believable. But yeah, it makes a huge difference to so many facets of people's lives by just getting this very easy fundamental thing right first time, you know?
Absolutely.
Right, so it's just turned 1:30. So for anyone on the call who wants to know if they do need a check on visibility with DSE, if you want to know whether you are in line with regulations, if you're doing enough to be supporting your DSE users based on anything that we've discussed today, you're more than welcome to book a free one-to-one with me. It will just be a strategy session, and you'll go away with some actionable insights to implement going forwards as well. So if you're interested in that, I will send a booking link in the follow-up email. I'm going to attempt to get that out to you Monday morning. So that is the plan, and the recording as well, just in case you want to share it with anyone. But thank you both, Stephen and Andrew. It's been a really good chat today.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate your time.
No problem.
No problem.
Have to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. All right then. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I hope that you did learn something new or taken something away, gained a new perspective, and we'll hope to see you next time. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.